Hi and welcome to our online clinic. I'm Angela, your MC for today. We are glad to have you here at Insight into sendQuick security settings. So let me touch on the admin matters before we start in the presentation format. So please note that they will be recording down for this session. And if you have any questions at all, you can actually ask your questions at any time during this session through the chat window. And we'll address to all your questions at the end of the session during the Q&A portion. So, and good news for you guys who are attending our session on Zoom, there will be a lucky winner that will be drawn for our USD $50 Amazon gift card. And the lucky winner will be drawn at the end of the session. So do stay tuned and stay till the end of the session. And also do check out our Facebook page and click like to get a chance to win. We are very honored to have with us today Mr. Andy, our Customer Experience Manager, and Sehe, our Chief Technology Officer, to join us today to share on the configuration of more security settings to prevent unauthorized access. So without further ado, I shall pass over the mic to Andy, our Experience Manager, to share with you. Over to you now, Andy.
All right. Oops, we're not in question and answer yet. Okay, let me share my screen. Meanwhile, a very warm welcome to everyone joining us. I'm so glad to see so many of you joining us, and I see some of you even from all the way from Canada, UAE, Indonesia, and some other places. Please do let us know if you're from faraway places, but we really are very appreciative that you join us. It must be very unearthly hours right now. Okay. Yeah, from Philippines as well. Hi, welcome. Okay, I'm just going to start my slides. Hopefully you can see this. We are going to talk about something that is quite interesting, but I believe most of you are here to understand a bit more about how to configure the security settings within sendQuick. And this is a very important topic in case you need to configure and sometimes you're not sure about it, you may not know what to do. So we're going to talk a bit more about the security settings. But before I begin though, need a little help. I can see that some of you have started chatting. I'd like to know more about you. Let us know whether currently, okay, in the chat box, tell us, okay, are you currently a sendQuick user, end user? Wow, Gringo here as well. Okay, we got people from Korea. Annyeonghaseyo. Thank you for attending. Thank you for supporting our clinic. And yes, first question. Can you let us know, are you a sendQuick end user? Meaning you're the one who configures the sendQuick for your organization. You check the logs, making sure everything's okay, troubleshooting. Are you a sendQuick end user? Do put in the chat and let us know. Yes, if you are. Yes, I saw some reply. Yes, great. Okay, that is good. So next question is, if you're not a sendQuick user, then are you our partner or our reseller? Or you're the SI, you're the one who helps to install, implement for your customers. And you need to do, yes, partners, thank you. Yes, so great. I'd like to welcome you as well for joining us, okay? And how about you're here as a guest? Right, you're here and you're evaluating sendQuick. Maybe someone invited you to understand more about what our features, what we have in our sendQuick. Yes, and do share with us. Let us know if you're here as a guest and you're evaluating sendQuick. All right. Okay. Are you in any of these categories? Just type in which category you're in the chat. Let us know. Right. And finally, if you're not in either of this category, then I want to ask also, are you not quite sure why you are here? Okay, just in case you stumble upon our webinar, and just give it a shout out anyway, okay, that let us know that you're not sure why you're here, but you're here, right? Okay, but that's a joke. Okay, I think we have guests as well. Welcome. Now, whether you're from any of this category, we like to welcome you and hope that this session will be very relevant, because if you need to do sendQuick installation, you need to configure sendQuick, you need to know the security settings, right? And for security settings, I'm going to do my best to demonstrate, share with you what we have on our sendQuick box. Now, despite my best efforts, I hope to enlighten you, but if I end up confusing you instead, no worries, because as long as you are our customers, right, you can always contact our tech support. Our tech support is always ready to guide you in any security issues that you have. Okay, great. Without further ado, I'm just going to go and talk about a bit of understanding the sendQuick setup. Now, let's just do some analogy. Now, I guess this one most of you will be familiar with. If you are having a organization or a network, you may have a printer, right? And a printer in your network. And as long as it's in a network, you have an IP address. Anyone in a network, any terminal, any computer, you can send a job request, print request to this printer with the IP address. And the printer will do what it does, print out, right? So similarly, for sendQuick, okay, as it sits in your network. So as long as you have the IP address, any terminal and anyone in that same network can access to this box. It can send a request and it can send out SMS messages, not the printout this time, right? Right. So that is how, in a way, sendQuick works. But of course, sendQuick is slightly more sophisticated than a printer because you can also connect it to your servers. It could be your network monitoring tools. It could be your enterprise resource, your ERP software. It could be your security software, any monitoring tools. You want to detect incidents and you want to send alerts so that your engineer knows about the problem so that you can detect it. Hardware issues, resource issues, reaching a certain threshold, you will be able to send the message to sendQuick, and sendQuick will allow you to send it out as a message. And now our sendQuick can also send, besides SMS, we can also do what we call the MIM apps, the mobile instant messaging apps. So we have your WeChat, your Facebook, your Facebook Messenger, your WhatsApp, Telegram, right? We can also send alerts and notification to these platforms, okay? So in a nutshell, as long as any device on the same network has the IP address of the sendQuick, it can actually do all this. But do you really want that to happen? Because then, especially for SMS, you have to pay for each SMS. So you want to ensure that you prevent unauthorized access or unauthorized usage, right? So I'm going to just give you an example. Probably you're wondering, is it true? As long as I know the IP address, I can send a message. I'm going to switch over to my browser, and then we can do a bit of demo. So this is our dashboard where you can see our settings on the right, where you see the ETH0. We can see the IP address is 192.168.199. That is the IP address for this box within our network. Now, if you know how to use this, you've seen this before, you can see system usage. Whenever there is a message sent, you'll be logged here. So this box that we have is a demo box. We are not attaching it to any modem. So we will not be sending out the actual SMS. But however, if any message is meant to be sent through the SMS, will come in here and it will appear here in our queue. Currently, there's nothing in my queue, right? But if I am on a browser within the same network as this box, I can actually issue this command. No, this is the IP address with the HTTP post command called CMD system API SMS as send SMS.cgi with the parameters, the number. In this case, let's say I put my number. Now I use the percentage 2B to represent a plus sign, which is what we put in front of the international code of a phone number. So 65 is Singapore, and this is my number. Oops, and it go away. Okay, yes. And TAR message is the message. So I'm going to put test as the test message, mode as a text. So if I will press this in a browser, this method will actually send an SMS through our sendQuick box. So you see, okay, queued. So if I come back to my dashboard, you will notice now that in my queue, system usage queue, I've accidentally keyed it twice. It has been queued to be sent. Now, if my modem was attached, it would have gone out as SMS. It will cost us money to send out this test message. And all I did was just go to the browser and key in this command. So in a way, anyone attached to this same box, same network, knows the IP address, can actually do that. but you don't want that to happen, do you? Right? So how do we have access control over such issues, right? So this is where this part comes in. I'm going to go through, since you all can see the thing. I'm not going to go back to my slides. The security setup. Okay, under the dashboard security setup, there are various items here. I'm going to go through some of them, not all of them, but I want to highlight a few things that you may not want to touch if you're not sure. Okay, the first one is server admin permission. Now, server admin permission is basically, if you read here, allowing sendQuick server admin page, this user page that I'm on right now, is that you allow people to access this web interface of the sendQuick admin, right? But it's limited to by the IP addresses. Then only these IP addresses, once the sendQuick identify, can allow permission to use. If it's blank, currently there's no records. If there are no records, means anyone can access, or rather anyone within a network can access, as long as they have the IP address. Okay, but if you want to limit that, you can actually add a record. But here's where I want to caution. Now, if you are having a few computers and your IP maybe it's not static, you may want to don't touch this unless you're very sure, because you can accidentally lock yourself out. If I put an address which is a non-existent IP address, and only that IP address can access this page, and you're on an IP address that is not listed here, you can never get back to this page to make a correction. I hope you understand what I mean. So this part is try not to touch it. Do check with us before you really want to control this. But if once you can do wildcard, you can put all different formats. If you want to be sure, you just put a whole range of IP address. Then at least you don't be too strict in your permission. Then you may have a lesser chance of getting yourself locked up. Okay, but coming back to this, I think I want to move on to host permission. Earlier on, I showed the example where if you go to a browser, I can just do this simple command and I can send a message. But I want to restrict that. I don't want any IP to come in and send SMS just like that. So under the host permission, you'll notice that over here, there's no entry. Again, when there's no entry means anyone can send. Anyone, there's no restriction. However, if you know the IP addresses of those devices that will be sending message that have the permission, you can add them in here, right? So if I have currently, let's just put there Andy's laptop. Now, let me just confirm my current IP address. If I go to my network status, I can actually pick it up from my properties of the network I'm on. I'm actually on 192.168.3.151. Let me just copy that. So this is this. Okay. So let's say I add another record, okay, called this MacBook, which is another IP address. Now, what I have done here is that I only allow these two devices to be able to send SMS. sendQuick will detect the IP address. If the IP address are not either one of these, you're not allowed to send. Okay, so since this is allowed, let me just do another test and I'll show you what I mean. If I go to dashboard now, okay, let me just clear the queue. Too many in this. Let me just clear the queue and do the demo again. Okay, so there's nothing in the queue now. If I were to use the same command again to send, okay, call it this time, will pass. Okay, because this is the same IP address that's listed in my IP address list, it should pass. And if I refresh, I should be able to see a message queue. right? Will pass, okay? Because my IP address is found in this listing under my security setup, right? So it went through. But now, let's say I do not want this laptop particularly to be able to access. I delete this. So they only allow this IP address to send. Now I go back and do the same steps and see whether it will allow me to send a SMS. Okay, so let me just clear this queue first so that to not come. Okay, so currently there's nothing in the queue. Now I try to send this again, and put a message say me will not pass. Now remember, now my IP address is not in the whitelisted IP addresses. It should not allow me to send SMS. If I could send it, you'll say access denied, right? So because my IP address is not in the list of IP addresses that's allowed to send message. So this is one way so this is how if you know the IP addresses of the devices that you want to allow to use your sendQuick box, you can actually go to the HTTP host permission and key them in of the IP addresses. So anyone else with other IP addresses will not be able to send SMS. Okay, so I'm going to delete this now because when I delete this, everyone can use. All right. So that is one way, using a HTTP host permission. Second thing is called SMTP host permission. This is not so much used, but it's the same concept. When there's nothing, anything can go through. But once you key in an address of the IP address, that only that will be able to access. Okay, so I will just not show this is not the common thing that is used, but email user permission. Okay, email user permission, what happened is maybe we have configured within your setup, you have your network monitoring systems, you could have your ITSM, your DCIM, and each one you used a particular email to send to sendQuick. So the sendQuick in the email filter will know whenever it comes from this systems or this email, it is from this system. Okay, so for example, I can add a new record. Say maybe it's a DCIM, for example, and we have called it a DCIM at unauthorized. Okay, so again, if there's no records under this listing, means any email address will have access. But if you only want to restrict permission to only certain emails can send to sendQuick and to be able to send out the eventual SMSs, yes, you can actually put them here. So now I've configured these 3 emails. How do I test it? Let me show you. I'm going to test it using our system test tools and a system connectivity test. Okay, so if that email, earlier on, I configured DCIM at unauthorized.com. Okay, and if I key in the number, my phone number and the IP address, I am able to actually test sending email. This is under test, and I send. Okay, so this tool actually allows us to do a demonstration how you do email to send, but in real implementation, the email can be coming from your other boxes using that email address. I'm just using this to show you how it works. If you go to the system usage, again, because I allow it, is under the permission list, it's able to send. So I will have the sender, dcim.unauthorized.com, and the phone number that it was supposed to send out to, because I put it as in the email address, the to email address, and the message. So this went through, right? So this means if okay, let me just go back again. So These emails are those that I give permission to be able to send to the sendQuick box to send out messages. Now, if I were to test, okay, notice these are 3 emails here. Let me test now, sending an email that's not listed. Okay, so let's call it unlisted. And same thing, I'm going to send to my phone number at the server, IP address, testing again. This should not go through. Okay, and I send. So now I get an email from an unlisted email address, not the one that I gave permission to. Will it go through? Okay, you go to the dashboard. Let's see. System usage. Look, it's not in the queue. All right, it didn't get passed through to be sent. Right. And if you want to find out where it went to, you can actually go down to your usage logs under the alert log, under the discarded tab. So this shows where all the discarded emails that didn't go through will be stored in the log. So reason, sender not allowed. So again, we didn't give permission for this email called unlisted at TelerX to send out SMS. So it will not be able to pass. It will come here. Okay, so here's another, so email is another way you can restrict access to whoever can send SMS, right? So we've done the email. Relay host permission, I will not cover so much because again, not something that we use often, but if those of you who want to use this can talk to our tech support, we can help you. Same with database connection. Again, when there's no entry, anybody can access, no restriction in database connection. But if you're very clear what you want to do, you can actually add the IP address of your database connection that only those IP address can access the database. Okay, system services, I'll come back to this later. SSH remote access. This is for people if you want to give access to the shell remotely. Now, I don't advise you to configure anything here, but if you really need to do that, when you create keys to make sure that there's security, again, talk to our support team that will help you to go through this. I'm going to go a bit more on the SSL setup because this is a common question we do get. How do you set up the SSL? But it's going to be a long process. So I'm going to cover the token management first. Okay. Token management. What is token management? I'm just going to remove this first. This was a demo. Okay. Now, again, certain times, maybe you want to restrict a access, maybe at different times. You want to have blackout period. During certain times, you make sure your server do not accidentally send out messages, or you want to make sure that certain application can send only because there's a token. Okay, this is another level of security, meaning nobody can send message unless they have a token. And this is where you configure the token. Okay, so this is a bit stricter. If you be careful doing this, when you do this, it could also mean a lot of people cannot send SMS, but you need to make sure you configure the tokens for everyone that's allowed to send SMS. Okay, so to do this, what we do is first you must make sure the token is enabled. So you go to your messaging setup, SMS messaging setup. Under this, there is a HTTP to SMS service. Right, it's enabled. Authentication. Currently, there's no authentication. There's no need to make sure you have a proper token before you can send. It doesn't check against any token. But if you want to have more stricter access, you can actually put a token. Okay. So now we enable token management. If I enable this, let's just say I save this. Earlier on, okay, all this had gone through. Okay, will not pass because of token. You say token required. You can no longer use this method to send SMS, right? I've blocked it because now sendQuick requires you must have a token before you can send SMS. Are you all clear so far, right? I hope you understand this part. Okay, right. Now the question and answers, we'll try to answer them later. Okay, I just go through the flow. Then how do you enable the token? So here, let's view token. Currently, there are no token. This is same as coming back to security setup, going to the token management. Currently, there's no token. That means nobody can actually send SMS, right? So I'm going to add a new record. So let's just, for this purpose, we call it a demo. This will be the auto-generated token. You don't need to worry about creating, or you can create your own, but let's just use the auto-generated one. I'm just going to copy it. Okay. Now this interesting thing, there's this thing called blackout. I'll come back to that later. Okay. So I'm going to save this. Now earlier, this command didn't go through, right? I tried to do this command, it didn't go through. Let's just change. Now we will now pass because of token, because I'm going to put in this parameter token equals to that token I just copied from the one that was generated earlier. So let's see if it goes through. So we now with a token, it is successfully queued, right? Let's confirm. Come back to the dashboard. Network is running a bit slow. Give me a while. Sorry about that. Okay, a bit unstable. If I go to system usage, I can see that is now gone through because I've used a token. This will now pass because of token. So I put in the token parameter with the exact token key that was generated. It allows me to go through, right? Okay, so you can also restrict access based on token. But how about if you make it interesting? Let's say earlier on we say there's this thing called a blackout, right? A blackout can be a particular time of the day that you want to ensure that you don't send out SMS. Maybe during evening, especially those you don't want your customers or whoever to get alerted or send SMS, you can actually set this block up. So meaning, I guess I'm just going to do a demo. I'm going to add this demo blackout. The blackout can be once, it could be daily, it could be weekly, it could be monthly. It's up to your requirements. Let me just do this as once. Today, I just want to block out today. This is today's date. Okay. And the time where the blackout should take effect. So 20, let's put a whole day and enable. So this blackout for the whole day, even if you're the token, you can't send SMS, right? So this is called demo blackout. Oops. I'm a bit stickler for this. Just let me spell it correctly. Ooh, okay. Okay. Now this is one of the blackout criteria, but I have now need to associate the token to this blackout. So I go back to my security setup and then my token management. Let me click on this. Earlier on, I selected no blackout, but now I just created one. I'm going to select this as my demo blackout. Remember, this blackout I have configured earlier is for the whole of today. So even if I have the token, will not, let me do this, not pass because of blackout. Even if I key in the token here, right, it will not go through this time because we are now in a blackout period, right? So again, you can restrict certain access or making sure that you don't have unwanted SMS sent out at the wrong time. You can actually use this feature as well. So I hope that explains what token management can do, right? And to be sure, let me come back to my system usage. And okay, this is probably the earlier message that went through. Will now pass because of token, but the one that was blocked because of the blackout period, I think it should go under the discarded as well. Sender not allowed. okay, I can't remember where the blackout gets sent to if it's not allowed. Basically, it's not allowed to send because of the blackout period. Okay, so we have covered basically the whole of most of the security setup here. The one I'm going to take some time is called the SSL setup now. SSL setup. Now, the beauty of our sendQuick box is that it is on-premise, right? So it actually sits within your own network, internal network. So if we browse this, we use the browser to access the web interface. Actually, you don't need the SSL, right? But of course, if you have it public-facing IP address, you need people to access for some reason, then you may want to make sure you have SSL encryption and all this, right? So here is how you enable the SSL here. Okay. Before you do any SSL, actually, incidentally, if you are a customer, we recently sent out a quick tip on how to configure the SSL. We have actually give you a link to this. This is some of the things that we're doing these days. We're going to tell you or share with you how you can actually do a certain configuration. Now, the first step you want to make sure is this. Let me go back to my okay, under the messaging, SMS messaging setup. Okay, I want to remove this token first because this will create problem for us. So I will not have, no need to have token. Okay, just save this. Okay, so far you all can follow about the whole security settings in sendQuick, right? I just realized if I have just now switched to a different browser, you all probably couldn't see this. Okay. Right, now coming back to SSL. Okay, before you start the SSL configuration, you may want to go to the server setup, optional network setup. Okay, this is key. Okay, because there is this thing that says open default web service port 80. This is like your HTTP access. Okay, make sure it's enabled. It is yes. What it does is if you have only earlier on, maybe you configured SSL and you only allow SSL access, that means every time you must use HTTPS with the IP address to access, right? You may have set this to no, okay? But if you now want to change the configuration, I would suggest you put it back to yes first, because if your configuration fail and your HTTP port is not open, you can't even access back this interface using the IP address because you have blocked it, both as the port 80 as well as the SSL if it fails, right? So to be sure, if you want to configure SSL, we recommend you make sure this is back to yes default first, so that you can make correction later by coming back using the HTTP access, right? Because then you may get locked up, right? So make sure that this, again, under server setup, optional network setup, the open default web service port 80, make sure it's yes before you go and change anything at the SSL. Okay, so this is now yes, so no problem. If I now go back to security setup and I go to my SSL setup, okay, if I need to put a new cert, a new key, right, I will put them here under the key, copy in here and put the search here, and you make sure that it's enabled SSL service. So now where do you get the key and where do you get the cert? So what we have in default, we give you a self-signed SSL cert and SSL key. If you want it to be certified, you need to go through a CA, a certified authority, to certify it for you. But then you need to generate the CSR to give to them so they can generate the cert for you to upload. If you need it to be certified by an authority, a CA, you can then get the file they give you and upload it here, okay, where you can put in the CA file. All right, so now I'm going to go to steps first. Prior to this, how then do you generate this key? Okay, I'm going to stop sharing this screen because I need you all to see another software. That's how I'm just sharing the browser. I'm trying to see if I can share my whole screen again. Angela, help me check if you all can see this software that I just put on the screen called XM or SEM.
Yep.
Control panel.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, great. Okay, so this one you can download. I think if you go and look for our manual, we'll tell you where you can find this to download this software. It's a free software. Okay, you can download and you can use this to generate the SSL cert and key. So you go to the control panel of this SAM or XM, whichever you call it, click on shell. So a terminal prompt will come up. Okay. We're going to generate the key using this command called OpenSSL. But before I do that, I want to put it in a folder where I know where I can find these files later on. So for example, I'm now going to create a folder. Okay, these are extra steps, but just is to make it sure it's easier to see. SAM, when you install it, will have a folder called SAM. And by default, when you use the shell command prompt, it will go to this directory. But in this directory, there are many files, right? So you may have problem finding. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a directory, okay? I'm going to call a folder called SSL files. Okay, so this is where I want to put all my SSL files. I can come back here using a browser to look for it later. So I come back to my shell prompt. Okay, the directory now is under SAM. I'm just going to go to change to SSL. Right. So if I do a directory, nothing in there. All right, because it's a new folder that I just created. Okay, great. So now I need to do this command to generate the SSL key, right? So the command will be open SSL gen RSA. This will be using this encryption standard -3 minus out the name of the file. Okay, so you can name whatever file you want. Maybe I just call it my SSL.key. And this is the bit of encryption. For simplicity, we put in 4096 higher, maybe better, right? So we're going to generate the key now called mySSL.key in that folder that I just created. Okay, and press this. Okay, great. So when you generate the SSL key file, they will ask you for a passphrase, a password. You will need this later. So maybe, for example, this time I'll just call it mypass, MAPASS. MYPASS, mypass. Okay, so I created now the key. If I do a directory, the file is here, MSL key. Right? If I go to my folder, I go to SS file, the file is here. All right, later I will open this with a notepad so I can copy out the key and go to my sendQuick and paste it here. Okay, but I'm not done yet because I need to do the cert. So let me just go back to that prompt. So I'm back here. So next step you want to do is generate the cert, the SSL cert, right? So I'm going to do this again, SSL, come on. Request, new, it's 509 as another the standard. Okay, days. So if you want to generate a cert that will be valid for 1 year, you can put 365. course, you want to have 2 years, you can just put multiple of that 2 years and put that figure there. 365 times 2, you can put in a bigger number. But let's say I'm generating this cert that will be valid for 1 year. Okay, minus the key. Okay, this is where I will reference the key file that I created earlier. Now, earlier on, I call it my SSL.key. If you name it something else, make sure that name is the same as this name here, right? And minus out is the output file. I will call it my SSL.srcrt. Okay, so I'm not sure whether you all can see it, right? Maybe a bit small. Okay, can't do anything about it. But this will be a command, and I'll generate this. Again, they will ask for the passphrase. Now, remember earlier on when I created the key, I needed to key in a passphrase that I'm using. So this will tally. Earlier on, I said my password is MYPASS. So if it tallies, it will go through. Okay, you're about to be asked to enter information that will be incorporated into your certificate request. So what you're about to enter is what I call a distinguished name, a DN, right? Those are just to identify that this is the cert is only for you, right? So okay, so maybe I'll just key in country name. I'll put SG because they need a 2-letter code. State, province, Singapore. There's no much states. Just put Singapore. If you're in other countries where they are bigger, your states, you can put it in. Locality, again, Singapore has no small city. I'll just put Singapore again. And company name. Okay, so I'll put Talaria X Private Limited. Organization unit is optional. Maybe I just call it technical support. Contact name, okay. Sorry, common name. So our server, maybe our server is called sendQuick. I'll just call it sendQuick. Email address. You can put in your email address that is associated with the cert. I just put in mine, and that is done. So that is if I do a directory, you notice now there's 2 files. If you come into the folder, these are 2 files that was created. I'm going to open it with my notepad. Control A to select all, copy. This is my key, right? So, and then I go back to this portion where I'm supposed to key the key, and I just paste it here. Okay, so same thing, I paste the certificate here. I open that file with the certificate, just copy and paste it here. All right, this is how you do it. But what if you need to get a CA to prove your cert? Now, we can do an additional step to generate the CSR that you give to the CA. So it can be this command. Now again, I'm referencing to the key file, same file name as I created earlier on, but this time around I call it my SSL CSR. We'll ask the same thing again, put in that password. Okay, this is the same as when you create the cert. You can actually do it to, one step as well, but I'm just doing it separately to show you. Scroll down. Okay, so just slightly different from the cert. For the CSR, they ask you a challenge password. I mean, I just gonna put any password. Okay, so this will be, if you do a directory, now I've created besides the key, the cert, there is also a CSR. So this file is only necessary if you need to get a CA to certify your SSL's key and cert. So you send this to them, the CSR file, they'll give you a file, which will then, the CA file, you need to put it here and you upload it here. Okay. So again, CA, some are paid, so you need to check with them what kind of fees you need to pay, or you have an internal CA server that does it. You can actually send this CSR and you get the file to upload it here, right? Cipher strength basically is to encode it further with a better cipher strength. So you want to choose higher in case. These are all different standard DHE, CBC, RSA. If you don't know what it is, means you're not using it, then don't click on it. If you're not sure, you can always check with our support team. Now, SSL protocol, the good thing about us, sendQuick, is that actually we support up to the latest version 1.3, but there are some that are still on 1.2. So I recommend that you just put 1.2. It will work for most cases. It will, yeah, and key in that password that was keyed earlier on, and you save it. So once you're done with this, you can always go and test it. HTTPS, right? So you should be able to log in, then your SSL is fine, okay? So this is the steps you can do for your SSL settings, okay? For MIM requirements, okay, where can you get SSL cert for MIM requirements? Very good question. These are the kind of questions I leave it to the end so I can ask my CTO to answer. How to know and detect there's no MITM, any SM is still secure, not hijacked by someone? Again, a very good question. This one I leave it for my CTO to answer. Right. Okay, so now I covered all the security setup. Let me come back to this. We'll come back to the question later. Hope you'll be patient with us. These are the things that we set up on the security setup. What are things that you can do? But the other thing of security is always okay, not a password pick. System services. Just as I mentioned, I will come to this system services. Okay, system services. If you notice that sometimes you do security audit on your box and I say, hey, are you using this? Are you using FTP to do SMS? If you're not, can you turn it off because you're opening up something that is can be abused. If you're not using it, might as well turn it off. So if you're not using any of these, you can actually disable them. So you're not using FTP to SMS feature because we actually allow you to FTP a file out and we can send out SMS based on FTP file. That is an FTP method, but you are not using it, you can turn it off. Same with SSH port, SMTP, filtering, all these things. Whatever you think you may not need, you're not using SNMP trap, you can turn it off. Syslog, you can turn it off. Okay. So let me just show, if you have turned it off, where does it show that it's been turned off? If you go back to the dashboard, if you remember earlier on this part, it will show you what are the services that is enabled or disabled. Basically, I've gone to security setup and I can actually turn them off. Things that I'm not using, right? So you can click them off, and you can also do it like SMS to email. Maybe you do not want HTTP SMS. You only want email to SMS. So you want to turn off HTTP to SMS altogether. You can actually go to the messaging setup, right? And disable them, right? So this is another additional place where you can actually do filtering. You can actually remove things that you don't need. Let's say you don't want to HTML, let's disable altogether. Then you don't have allow people to go to the browser and just key in and send message. You only allow email to SMS, for example. Save it, and if you go to the dashboard, you will notice that now the HTTP to SMS is also turned off. Okay, so again, there are various features you can remove things that you don't need that won't expose you to more security attacks on etc. Unwanted usage or unwanted access. You can actually turn them off. Okay, so this is under the can do two places under messaging setup, SMS messaging setup, where you can enable or disable those that you want to use and those that you don't want to use. MIM, if you're not using, is disabled. All right. Okay. And the other place where you can actually do this is over at system services, which is covering more of the services more than the SMS. Okay, this is just making sure that you're not using FTP, disable it, and all these things, and only these two are enabled, for example. Right. Right. So the last thing I want to talk about security is always the passwords. Now, normally when you get our box, we give you a default password. And sometimes we're a bit worried people don't change them. I really remind you, if you're not changing it, please go and change it, or else it's too easy for anyone to come in. But there are different passwords. There are server admin password. Now, the username are all fixed. You can't change it. Actually, yeah. So what you want to do is just change the password. Okay. Put in a new password and make sure the password follow this. It must be at least 8 characters, maximum 16, at least have one capital letter, one small letter, one number. Okay, so make sure that that will be a password, make it long if possible. And there's a supervisor password. What's the difference between an admin and supervisor? Basically, a supervisor can do everything an admin can do, except change the admin password. Okay, that means the admin can log in and change the supervisor password, but the supervisor cannot log in and change the admin's password. So admin is higher, okay, but supervisor can see everything here. And finally, there's an operator. Operator are those that you give a login to allow them to see the logs or to do backups. All right, they are not allowed to do any other configuration with the server. Right, that is what an operator does. Okay, and all this login is you configure only if you need it. If you don't need it, if you want to find out more, you can always call our tech support. We'll provide you support on this.